Well, good morning. Granny Gear here for Old Guided Bike. On this Tech Tuesday, let's talk tires, shall we? Let's talk tires, shall we? Gravel tires and road tires, because they both have one thing in common. Even though they do very different things, they've both been getting bigger. Road bike tires, getting bigger. Gravel bike tires, getting bigger. Where that'll all end, not absolutely sure. I have some ideas about that. Well, I want to talk about my journey on where I've come to on my gravel bike tires, I think is a good sweet spot. I think I'm going to stay for a while. And also, I have acquired a set of very, very big road tires to see, well, what that's all about. Start with the gravel bike tires. Now, I started like most of you guys, probably with maybe a 38 or a 40. That's kind of what we had in the old days of gravel bikes, and gravel bikes back then didn't take a very big tire. And then we moved to 42s and the bikes accommodated bigger tire. And then we've gone to 45s and now we're going to 50s. And I even talked about I would like to, at some point in a gravel bike, be able to run a 2.1 or a 2.2 mountain bike tire. But for most of my riding, that's way too much. In fact, after testing quite a few 45s and typically running a 42 and then moving to 50s, I have found that 45, that's a compelling size. That's big enough to give you quite good purchase off-road, pretty good amount of tire between the rim and the rock, and yet they're not, if you get the right tire, still pretty good to ride on smooth roads and pavement and whatnot. And that's kind of where I've settled. Now, I've used Wilderness Trail Bike tires for years. I have just a good relationship with them, and they've been very responsive and very helpful. Say, look, I'd like to try these. And the thing is with these guys, they make so many tires that they make one that's pretty representative of a genre all the way through. If you want a more aggressive gravel bike tire, you can get it. If you want one that isn't, you can get it. They don't really do pure road performance tires necessarily, although we'll get to that in a minute. But I think they've just been a great resource for me, and I've really appreciated all the years. I haven't liked every tire I've ever tried from them, but there's been a couple in gravel that I have loved. One is the Resolute, and the second one is the Vulpin, and recently the Vulpin S. Now, I've used the 42 millimeter Resolute, and that was my go-to tire. You look back in videos, it's a tire I loved. But you know, as I started testing some 45s, an interesting thing happened. I realized that was a big 42. I didn't really know it at the time. It actually measured more like 44 on a 24 millimeter internal rim. Big tire. And the weight of that tire was actually very close to what some of these 45s were I was testing. So really, I kind of was riding a skinny 45 when it really come down to it. And so it got me thinking, really, maybe I should look at a 45, because I think 45s are going to be more common in the marketplace for a size. A lot of bikes accommodate that, and tire people tend to fill out what's available on bikes as time goes by. What I've come to recently after testing them is a combination of a Vulpin S rear in a 45 and a Vulpin non-S front. And here's why. Take a look at the two tires here up on the screen. On the left, you'll see the Vulpin S, that's my rear tire. On the right, the Vulpin. Very, very similar tread pattern. The biggest difference between the two is the S has a solid center ridge of rubber on it. And so I thought, well, you know what? When I'm riding them, could I tell the difference between the S and the non-S? I am imagining I could, maybe rolling down the road on like pavement. Blindfolded, maybe not. But I have no doubt that the S is probably giving me a little bit better rolling performance just on the road. And on the rear, where most of your weight is, that's where you want that if you're going to have it anywhere. And yes, on the front though, on the front you want the most cornering traction and front braking traction and stuff. That's where it's most important. So the non-S Vulpin has the center ridge of closely set but not connected knobs. And then it has the nice little side knobs. And the tire itself, you can see it here. Maybe not so good to see on camera. But you can see these little knobs here, they have a lot of good sharp little working edges, and they're really nicely supported. They're not flimsy and like some of the tires I've used where you can rub the knobs and they squirm all over the place. That's not so good on the road. And these tires have really, really impressed me. They're not as good in the sand and the rough stuff as the Resolute, but overall, they punch, I think, above their weight. Now, today I did a ride with the boys, and it's not unusual for a cutty ride we do here. It went from road to bad road to terrible road, and then if we kept going, we get into some dirt. You can see a little bit of it in the video there. And for that ride, these tires, these 45 millimeter Vulpin and Vulpin S, was just such a great combination. And I'm running at about 35 PSI for my 180 pounds. And, you know, I don't think I could really do better. Will something come along to turn my head? Maybe. Will I go to a 50 as my norm? Is that the next new sweet spot for granny gear? I don't think so, because my time on 50s, it seems like I crossed a mark. I could just, all of a sudden it felt, oh, I'm kind of dragging a tire along somewhere. And most of the time a 50 for me is just, it's overdone. I did use a 50 for rides like the Mammoth Tough, with all that pumice. Man, I would have used something bigger probably if I could. But the 50 Resolute was great for that. I also put the 50 millimeter Resolute on for the recent rock cobbler ride, because I thought, well, the speed, the rocks, maybe mud, this could be a good tire for that. And it was, but the Vulpin would have been just fine too. So for me, although I will keep a set of WTB 50 millimeter Resolutes in the closet in case for that day and that ride where I want to up the game a little bit, I'm going to run these Vulpin and Vulpin S's in the 45s, and we'll see. I think at some place I just got to stick with something, don't I? And I think that's what I'm going to stick with. So anyway, just my thoughts on that. Now, just recently, Pirelli Tires came out with a 40 millimeter road tire. It's the Pirelli P0 Race TLR. So not a cheap commuter tire by any means. No, it may not be the lightest, fastest casing, but however, 40 millimeter road tire? Wow, what's up with that? Because you know that won't fit most road bikes. That won't even fit the new modern crop of road bikes that have a pretty big tire capacity, like the 34 or 35. 40 millimeter tire won't fit a lot of all-road bikes. That probably will fit in my Time 80HX, but it's probably about as big a tire as you can get in there. Well, golly, what's it for then? Well, I have a suspicion it's kind of for people with a gravel bike who want to one day play roadie and still have a pretty big tire because it's what they're used to. Maybe, I don't know. Is it something like that? I'm not really sure. But interesting move on Pirelli's part. But it had me thinking. It has me thinking because in my road group, well, there's a lot of 32 millimeter tires being used. There's a few 34s. A lot of the 32s measure 34. What does a 34 measure? I don't know. I'm not going around measuring everybody's tires in the group, but they're probably pushing 35 anyway. And so I got to thinking, since my Time 80HX, which I run 30 millimeter tires on, which on a 25 millimeter internal rim measure 32, I got to thinking, what would it feel like if I put a bigger tire on? Something like this. This is, of course, Wilderness Trail Bikes tire. They were generous enough to send me a set of these exposure tires. Now, this is kind of an adventure road tire. It's not a super high performance road tire. But it is a 36 millimeter wide road tire. It's totally slick. There's no tread on this really to speak of. Oh, there's a little bit of the slightest file tread to it, but really pretty much it's a slick. And so I'm curious about this. What I'm going to do is put this on my Time 80HX and replace the 30 millimeter specialized turbo road tires. What I want to find out is, well, what's it like? What's it like? What do I give up? What do I gain? I have some ideas. I have some preconceived notions. Now, this is not going to be like, I'm going to try and prove how fast one tire is over the other. That's not what this is all about. I'm pretty certain these are going to be slower than my other tires, at least some part of the ride. And I don't have power meters and the types of things that really would make that reasonable. No, what I want to do is just experience it. I just want to ride it. I think I know what I'm going to gain, and I think I know what I'm going to lose. But I've been wrong before. So I'm going to put these on. I'm going to run them. I'm just going to leave them on for a while on the group rides. Am I working harder to keep up? Maybe I'm not working harder to keep up. What do they feel on the climbs? How are they going to be on the descents? I have some, like I said, I have some preconceived notions in Granny Gear's little brain that what it's going to be like, but wouldn't it be interesting if I was wrong? So anyway, these are going to be going on the 80HX, and I'll be running them for a while, and I'm really, really curious to see how that's going to be. The other day I was watching a YouTube podcast, and this guy who's a kind of a performance rider. They were talking about, hey, what are you running for tires right now? He's running 35s on his road bike. I mean, this is a fast guy, and he goes, I love it. So it's interesting. It's an interesting place we are in tires. So anyway, I'll be letting you know how the road tires are. I'll be following up in a video on that after I run them a while. In the meantime, I think the Vulpin and the Vulpin S combination, I think that's going to work really well on my Turner Cyclosis gravel bike there behind me. You know, the ride we did today had that mixture of pavement to bad pavement to no pavement to dirt to a little bit of adventure riding, and these tires they just rocked it. They really did. And I've noticed how much faster they are rolling. Not so much that I can, you know, see the numbers, but coasting with my buddies, guys that sometimes I don't seem to keep up with, well, now I'm catching them. So thanks to WTB, frankly, for being very, very supportive of this little channel and for all the past years of support you've given me. It's been very much appreciated. I really do like using those Vulpin tires, and really curious to see how these 36mm exposure road tires come out to be, because, well, we shall see. We shall see. In the meantime, I've got so much other stuff coming up too. I haven't mentioned it. A couple bikes coming in. Some wheels I think are going to be interesting. Not the normal choice in a gravel bike wheel. Well, more on that coming up. So stay tuned. Subscribe if you haven't, because I'd like you to be a regular viewer. You and I, yeah, we should get to know each other. All right, you guys have a great week and or weekend. And as always, you go ride your bikes.